Ah, yes, Tuesday night. We're back. We're back, and we're glad you're joining us as always. Thank you for joining us tonight and taking a Tuesday night to watch this. If you're watching it live, you're watching it afterwards. We're grateful for you. We thank you for checking us out, and appreciate comments and even questions afterwards. And as always, we do this live always with the intention that you have a resource to ask questions and, to hopefully leave this podcast with something that would last and help your life individually. And so take advantage of it. So tonight, the topic, getting past trust issues. I was It was kind of an interesting inspiration for this podcast because I started picking up on this pattern. It was mentioned in conversations I had with people at work and friends of mine, and different things people would say that kind of stuck out to me that I picked up on as an issue of trust, and I started noticing attributes in people that I know that were the evidence of some kind of distrust, sometimes very deep-seated distrust, sometimes just kind of surface level, but just, part of their personality and who they are. And then I mentioned this book that I'm listening to called The Path Between Two Seas. And this is where I was like, okay, I want to do a podcast on this because this is really interesting. They had, so there was kind of two phases to the building of the Panama Canal. And during the first phase, the French ran the entire project. And so the French engineers, they moved to Panama and hired tons of laborers, thousands of people to work this, humongous effort. And during that time, you gotta imagine this is like legit, jungle. This is not, it's not desert. It's not, you know, California. It's deep, thick, dangerous jungle. And so disease became a really big problem. And they actually did, at this time, we didn't even know the cause of malaria. And so malaria broke out and was literally killing tons of people. And they're unsure of the actual number of deaths, but thousands of people are thought to have died from malaria. And so because of how bad malaria was, they had these hospitals both in some of the towns and cities of Panama, but also they had set up these hospitals for the workers themselves. And apparently it got so bad that workers would not, it didn't matter what their malady was or what their problem was, they wouldn't go to the hospital. They would actually avoid the hospital like a disease, because if you went to the hospital without malaria, there was a really high chance you would catch it while you were in the hospital. And at one point, I guess up to 75% of the patients in the hospitals around this area had the disease. So people were literally avoiding the place you should be going to get help for maladies and injuries and stuff like that because they didn't trust it. And so I read that and I listened to that and I was like, wow, this is, an interesting concept. And then all of a sudden, all these thoughts started clicking together of things I had, picked up on. But it made me think of this issue of trust, which covers quite a few different, we'll just call them attributes, but, they have different characteristics, different expressions. And I started thinking about how common it is in our world today. So doing some research, Chat GPT, Google, based off my memory and, things I've written down over books that I've read and stuff like that, I started thinking about a lot of how America operates today. And we are a very distrusting people, not just in the United States, but there are many countries like that. Very, very distrusting, very cynical, very skeptical. And so when I thought about that in context of what the Bible teaches and how God, expects people to live, and not just expects, but, all throughout the scripture encourages people to live. I came to the scripture in Proverbs 3, verse 5, which is very, very commonly used. And maybe you listening have heard this scripture, but in Proverbs 3, 5, this is Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived, writing, says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. This will bring healing to your body and refreshment to your bones. So, intro done. my first question, and again, this is, I like asking you questions like this because you've been consistently a pastor for 40 years, and so you've been in the people business for a very long time and have experience seeing people both, in the positives of being a Christian and giving their lives to Jesus, and also those who have been kind of in this struggle ground, which is either ended well or ended bad for them. And so in that portion of life, when people are either, becoming converts or getting converted or, coming close to Christianity and hesitating, how much does this issue of trust or distrust play in people actually experiencing God for themselves?
Well, so when I think about the idea of trust and distrust and the relationship between those things, it's more of the standpoint of you can see
Not at all subtle, huh?
no, you didn't pull it off. There you are, live,
Hey,
live with a
everybody.
cup of tea.
This is what we do behind the scenes.
Yeah, but you didn't pull it off. You weren't subtle at all.
What's hilarious is he actually snuck off screen and got it for me and brought it over here all subtle, and I just blatantly went over and grabbed a big silver thing. I'll try better next time. That was fun. Excuse my interruption. Sorry.
Anyway, so the whole idea of trust is a very interesting thing because really, when it comes right down to it, the problem of trust isn't. It is people trust. It starts at that level, but the idea of trust in general, because for the most part, it's a people thing to start with. That literally translates into trusting God. Something that I've observed, very recently, actually, because we've had, this year's been a very interesting year. We had a lot of people making decisions, and of course, when you have a lot of people making a decision, you have one person come in, they to the church and they want to be a part, and it's a little bit less obvious. Because there might be one or two people, and then if they, all of a sudden they're not there anymore, it's like, you're not noticing it as much as when you notice several people come into the church and they're wanting to know God and have a relationship with God, and then some of them leave. It's more noticeable. Because there's, it's the traffic. Like, wow, a lot of people coming in, a lot of people going out. So it's a noticeable traffic. But how many of those people have actually, it isn't that they came in and didn't want to have anything to do with God and went back to the world from the standpoint of, that they saw, oh, maybe Christianity isn't for me, as much as they made decisions based on a lack of trust. And decided, well, you know what? I'm still gonna be a Christian. I'm still gonna believe in God, but I have a job. I have a boyfriend or a girlfriend. I have other obligations. And so they follow. They don't last. Jesus talked about the parable of the sower and seeds of people who are like this. They come in, and there's some that they're happy right in the beginning, but they have no root in themselves. There's others that because of the cares of this world, others because they didn't really apply themselves, and then there's the fourth group, which is those that are good grounds who, they lock into what God's doing, and so seeing that though, and seeing it is. At the end of the day, it's a lack of trust that is the motivation for them to not trust God. Mm-hmm. It's a lack of trust from life experience. Is they're used to losing things and don't like it. It's not so much that they're used to it as much as they are familiar with the idea of losing things, and they don't want to lose things. They want to hang on to things, and so people make decisions out of fear of losing things. One of the classic, right now, things that is talked about a lot is the fear of missing out, that people make decisions on the basis of the fear of missing out. And so it's not just specific to Christianity, it's just life in general, is that they'll make bad decisions in their life because they're afraid they're going to miss out if they don't make this bad decision. And which is ironic because you miss out on the greater thing so that you don't miss out on the immediate thing.
Yeah.
And so, but I think at the root, trust is the issue when it comes to that.
So you mentioned already one of these, and I'm going to pose the question here in the chat just to get people's feedback here. But I'd like to know from the listener what are some things you think cause people to be untrusting or to express distrust in one way or another. And I'll talk about some of those attributes, but I'll just fire that into the chat here, and you guys can throw in your responses as you see it. So what are some, just again, I'll be talking about your observation of people. What are some unhealthy displays of mistrust that you have observed in people over the years? And the reason why I qualify unhealthy is because obviously there are some things, that you should be hesitant to just step into. In other words, there should be thought before you just do that. And so there's, we'll talk, I'll ask you a little bit more about the balance of trust and things you shouldn't trust in. Because when I was a kid, I put my trust in things I definitely shouldn't have. But what are some expressions of mistrust that you've seen throughout the years?
So there are classic things, and I always try to not focus on the classic things because I'm a very strong believer that a lot of the obvious things in life are really a smokescreen for something more subtle. I'm always trying to find the root of an issue because to help people to grow as a person, to discover truth, those kinds of things there are always like smaller subtle issues that are the actual root problem, but there's an obvious thing. It's the in my where I live, we have these huge trees, and they throw off leaves, and so especially right now, our whole backyard is. The groundskeepers only come once every 2 weeks, and so they're gone. And 2 days later, it looks like they weren't there, and they're throwing these leaves everywhere, and it's just a mess all the time. So for the most part, the yard is a mess all the time, because they're not really dealing with the issue. Not that they're supposed to. In this, the analogy is not quite perfect, but the trees need to be cut back so that they don't throw off so many leaves. These trees are well overgrown, and so the wind comes and they just whip around and throw leaves everywhere, and they're not. If they were trimmed down, it wouldn't make such a mess. So they just come though, and just the classic blow, mow, and go, and so that's what they do. They're in and out there in 15 minutes, but it looks 2 days later, it looks exactly the same. And so they're not really. I think if they just didn't do anything, it wouldn't look a whole lot different. It's just it's a relief every for those 2 days that it's like, oh, at least it's going to be clean for a couple of days. But they're not dealing with the root problem, and I think that's what a lot of people do when it comes to issues in life is they don't deal with the root problem. And I think when it comes to the issue of trust, the things that are shown, which is the classic things of that they don't know people, they don't have relationships with people, those are the classic things that are the negative outcome of that. But why don't they have friends? Why are they not reaching out to other people is the real issue. Which I think is the more of the problem when it comes to a lack of trust. And so the real manifestation of a lack of trust is an inability to make relationships. It's not that they've been burned by relationships. It's the inability to be able to make relationships. Everybody has been burned by relationships.
Yeah.
There isn't a single person anybody who has any kind of relationships. Everybody has gone through a bad relationship. And there's the classic, you don't stop going to the grocery store just because you bought a rotten avocado. You don't go, oh, forget it, I'm never grocery shopping ever again because I got a bad avocado once when I went to a grocery store. It's just an overreaction. And that is often what people do, is they overreact when it comes to relationships. I had one bad relationship, so I'm never going to make relationships again, or I'm going to modify my approach to relationships. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to I'm going to be very, very careful, of the kinds of relationships I make. And so often what happens is it comes down to really one relationship, a boyfriend or girlfriend. That's the only one that we'll try, simply because we don't want to be alone. But we won't really make friends with people. We'll look for the one that we, there's an attraction there. There's, all the wrong reasons to get involved in a relationship. But we're willing to risk that simply because we don't want to be alone. But usually people like that are bad. They're bad at making that choice, and usually it's the wrong choice, and it turns out to be something that doesn't last anyway. Yeah. And so you have that, I think, is probably one of the most the most obvious signs of a lack of trust, is the inability to be able to make and maintain good relationships with people. I'd say that's probably number one. And out of that, just thinking about it, nothing else kind of pops into mind. That's kind of the up at the top. I think there's a lot of things that flow out of that. Is just the inability to be able to make and maintain relationships is probably a key factor in recognizing that you have a problem with trust.
Yeah. So what do you think, is the... Okay, I'm gonna get off this list. I was compiling this list of reasons why I think, because there was a time, and why say there was a time before my time, so I actually have never experienced this. But I'm not that old, but I'm also not that young. So there was a time, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, maybe you would remember a time.
Not quite.
Where
where
people could leave their doors unlocked.
Yeah, that wasn't my generation. My parents' generation.
Okay, fair enough. So
yeah.
All right. Okay, that's why I said maybe. I wasn't sure, because, like I said,
yeah,
I haven't
that was
experienced
definitely
that.
my parents' generation. We definitely locked our doors. That's why That's why at 13 years old I was called a latchkey kid.
Because you actually had a key to your
because
house.
we had to get a key to get into the house.
Yeah.
So it's like, even though I was on my own, which was that's another level.
Yeah.
Being able to leave your 13-year-old kids to let themselves in after school and make themselves something to eat and not worry about what was going to happen. So
I was considering that, what has changed in the last, we'll just say over the last 100 years. Something's clearly transitioned. And I was just trying to think of all the advancements, all of the changes that I could think of, and the things that I could kind of research and pick up on, and things that I thought were relevant, because you come across a lot of stupid stuff when you ask questions online. But some stuff that I think is actually relevant is, media has increased, dramatically, and the amount of attention people give to media, and the access to media. And so that was like a number, like probably my top, in my mind, things that have changed over that amount of time. Technology has changed drastically.
Yeah.
And then you have conspiracy theories that have morphed and become insane over the last 100 years. There were conspiracy theories 100 years ago I've read about, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But they're clearly, there's a different level of conspiracy theory nowadays. But thinking about those kind of three things, and there's more, but and each one of these kind of has their own little subcategories you could work through. But thinking about increased media, like if we just talk about media from the standpoint of the news, generally speaking, I would say roughly 90%, maybe more, of what is portrayed in the news is totally negative. It's always crime. It's scandal. It's death and mayhem, destruction, betrayal, theft, all kind. I mean, just you name
Yeah.
it. That's what the media portrays. So there is kind of a fear being pumped, right, from the news. Just talk about news in general, and then you jump to like entertainment. Entertainment portrays an idea of reality that's not actual reality, but it creates an expectation of how, people are supposed to live their lives.
Yeah.
And so there's an image created that people try to identify with or attach themselves to, which is very unrealistic in many ways. And then, jumping into like conspiracy theories, not going super deep, but things like deep state. And, I don't know if you read the recent headline of suspicious drone sightings that, in every article you read,
Yeah,
there's nothing,
yeah,
there's
yeah.
no meat to it. They're just saying, oh,
Yeah.
these drones, what's happening? People are talking about UFOs. It's just stupid stuff
Yeah.
that's happening. And then technology creating a sense of fear of being spied on
Yeah.
and privacy invasion and all that
Yeah.
stuff. So
Yeah.
all of this stuff being out there, and there being kind of an environment of fear and distrust in many different directions you look. With all that in mind, how much control or how much of a person's lack of trust is self-inflicted based off of exposure
Well,
and
that's
stuff like
that's
that?
see, that's the interesting thing is what you're talking about there, because if you started off with the idea of days gone by of not having to lock your house. Well, why didn't you have to lock your house? Were there no thieves back 100 years ago? I mean, I've read some stuff about, and even the first century. you know I don't worry about getting in my car and having somebody stop me, wave down my car, beat me, rob me, and leave me for dead.
Yeah.
But that was a common
Yeah.
experience in first century. And
Yeah.
okay, yeah, you're traveling slower, you're more vulnerable, you're on the back of a horse, those kinds of things. But still, you had those, just certain places that you went to, you knew, that thieves operated there, just like today.
Yeah.
So what's different? What has changed? And I honestly, when I think about it, from the standpoint of, because it is a relationship, trust is a relationship problem, and so the great thing about thinking is that you may think one caused the other, but if you think about it long enough, it could be the other way around as well. And in this case, I think is probably the case, is that the reason why there are people breaking into houses more now than before was because if you broke into somebody's house days gone by, inevitably somebody would catch you, they would see you, and you'd be busted. Whereas now, people see you, but they just don't say anything because there's a relationship breakdown. I'm not going to get involved. That's their problem. I feel sorry for them, but I'm not going to get involved in this. I'm not. Hey, what are you doing there? Because I might get hurt. And so whereas it used to be, depending on how far back you go, somebody's house is being broken into, 2 or 3 guys would say, hey, let's go get them. And then it's like, we're not going to get involved in this, because, or a phone call, hey, do you know your house is being broken into, to, I'm not going to get involved in this, to now you can function. Nobody's going to say anything. I mean, my next door neighbor had his truck stolen. And it's like, how long did it take, for them to break into his car, and how much noise did they make? To steal his truck, and nobody saw it. Yeah, I mean, nobody saw anything. And, yes, it was in the middle of the night, but nobody saw anything. And you got lights and things, that somebody must have seen something going on, but no, I'm not gonna get involved in it because of, because they don't mean that much to me. I've lived in places like right now. I mean, I think about it and I think, what can I do to overcome this? Is that I know my neighbors, but I don't know them well, and I think, gosh, how can I do this? But it's the hard part. The hard part of it is they will question my motives if I try too hard,
Yeah.
to be involved. It's like, what are you, some kind of nosy neighbor? Why do you want to be in my business?
My neighbors are actually like that, and we do sometimes a nosy neighbor. That's come up in
Yeah.
conversation. But they're great people, though.
Yeah,
That's what it
and
is.
it's like they're not, they're they're just being old school.
Yeah.
But that's
and we are surrounded.
but that's
by
where
many
we
old
are.
school people.
You know, that's where we are. Is so it's a catch-22, isn't it? You know, is it's hard to make relationships with people because it's hard to make relationships with people.
Do you think that we value relationships less today than
Yes,
maybe days
yes,
gone
and
by?
that's the thing is that we don't welcome new relationships. We don't welcome them. We're not looking forward to them. I do. I love meeting new people. I love building relationships with people and knowing new people, but that's not common. That's an uncommon thing. And the reason why I like that is because of the benefits that I've derived from having been able to live in different countries and moving a lot. I mean, we literally, my wife and I have moved so many times, you know, in 40 years of marriage. I don't even know how many times we've moved, you know, because we've moved several times just to different places, different countries, different states, you know, let alone within those places moved, you know, since I've lived here. I've lived here 18 years and I've moved 1, 2, 3, 4 times in 18 years of living here. I've moved 4 times, you know, and that doesn't count, you know, previous, 40 years of moving different cities, different countries, you know, and then we moved when we were in Liverpool, we moved 1, 2, 3 times in 10 years. When we were we stayed 5 years in the same house in Spain, which was that was probably the record for us, is to stay in one house for 5 years. But it was a great house, you know, it was a great. There was everything about it was great. And then when we were married 10 years. Well, we were married 8 years and I lived 10 years in Tucson, and I moved once, twice in 2 years, 3 years, 3 times in 2 years. And then we got married and we moved 1, 2, 3 times, at least 3 times that I can remember off the top of my head in 10 years. So, I mean, we've moved somewhere. I mean, like I said, 5 years was like the longest we lived anywhere. And so just move, you know. And so, so I've had all these opportunities to meet new people every time I move, you know, and I'm looking to move again from where we are now into somewhere else. And so but my point in all that is that even though we have made all these moves and got to know new people and things like that, that's not a common experience for people.
Yeah.
You know, people do move. I'm not saying that people don't move. They do move a lot. But meeting new people isn't common. Moving, yes. Getting new jobs where there are new people, yes. But meeting new people, I mean, actually getting to know these people and building relationships with these people, you know, it's because, well, I'm going to be moving soon anyway, and I'll probably get another job. And so we don't make friends, you know, we don't make friends with people. And so I think that's more the issue of our difficulty of trust is from that standpoint, is because we don't value relationships enough. And so I think that plays into it deeply, because we don't think there's a need for us to meet new people. But if you knew, because as a pastor, you know, and even though I've been moving all that time, I lived and pastored the same church for 10 years in Liverpool, 5 years in Spain, and 18 years here, with an exception of 6 months that I had moved and come back. And so I've been, you know, for a long time in the same churches that I've pastored. But it's interesting how in those churches that I have pastored, how few new relationships people have built over the years. New deep relationships with new people is very, very minimal, very minimal.
So there's, again, we're talking about the kind of the cause of distrust at the moment, and we've got one answer in constantly, and this is actually, I think, it's kind of it's a I don't want to say eye opener. It's a it's revealing. It is revealing.
Yeah.
Constantly getting hurt by others they expect are trustworthy. Gossip, promises constantly being broken, and so thinking about from that perspective, constantly getting hurt by others. They are
Yeah.
expected to be
Well,
kind of
when I
trustworthy.
so when I hear that, my thought is that's somebody who doesn't know how to have relationships, because the reason why somebody would constantly be getting hurt in relationships is because they don't know how to build relationships, and so they're putting their trust in the wrong people. To start with, they don't understand the dynamics of how relationships work. They don't know that. So because if you're constantly getting hurt in relationships, it's because you don't know how to make relationships. It's not because you're this really giving, caring person, and you've been reaching out to all these people, and you just people are just crap. But that's the thinking. That's what you think because of your experience. You think, man, am I just meeting all the wrong people, or is it just that people are garbage? Well, of course I'm not meeting all the wrong people. How can it be that I'm meeting always the wrong people? You are.
Yeah.
You are meeting the wrong. And the reason you're meeting the wrong people is because you don't know how to make relationships, and so people that are good at making relationships are not coming into your circle because they recognize that you're no good at making relationships. And so they're not building relationships with you. People who know how relationships work are not building relationships with you. And so you might be, you are experiencing, especially that word constantly. If you're using the word constantly when it comes to relationships, you have to be honest with yourself and look in the mirror and say, you know what, I don't know how to make relationships. I don't, because I'm always in bad relationships. I'm always with people who are gossiping about me. Well, when you are, how to start this, when you understand life, when you have a good understanding of how life works, then you understand that you're not that important. You are not that valuable. Why would anybody want to spend time gossiping about you? You really are a low man on the totem pole for the most part, most of us, unless you're Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or, somebody who's, well known, unless that's you. What's there to benefit of gossiping about you? You're not anything. You're just one of 7.5 billion people or 8 billion people. You're not anything important. Why would people be spending the time? What you're looking at is you're looking at people that you've befriended that are just gossipers. You've befriended gossipers. You haven't befriended normal people. You've befriended the wrong kind of people. And more than likely, the reason why you've done that is because you're no good at making friendships. And I think that you have to look at the deeper issue is what's wrong with me that I'm no good at picking, people to have relationships with. And so I think that's a big part of the thing, because I hear these kinds of things, people say, because that's a common response of people. Well, I don't build relationships with people because people suck, and the people and the people you've met, and the reason that you have to. It's implied, but I'm going to go ahead and say it just in case it's not, is you have to look in the mirror and think, maybe birds of a feather flock together. Maybe I suck. And that's why I always am getting connected with people who suck. Because I have not developed the ability to be able to build relationships. And so the only kinds of people I can build relationships with are broken people like me. I'm broken, they're broken, we get along. We have a commonality because we're broken. It would be like, like if you're only friends, like if you're an alcoholic and you go to Alcoholics Anonymous and your only friends are from Alcoholics Anonymous, you're going to have a really weird set of friends. Because you are all going to be this, exclusive club of broken people that think that everybody else in the world is really broken, we're the only smart ones because we are actually doing something about our brokenness, but other people are just living in denial. And so you'll have this really weird idea of how life works and who and what people are like, and you'll stay away from normal people because normal people are weird, and but you'll be around your weird people, and weird people hurt people, the old saying, hurt people hurt people.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's what will happen is you'll be around hurt people that you're trying to befriend because you have something in common, but the problem is that you guys are broken, and you're going to gossip about each other. It's not, and so it's, the when I hear the phrase, when I hear somebody say, constantly being gossiped about, I'm pretty confident that I'm talking to a gossiper, because that's,
Yeah.
birds of a feather. You're picking people who are gossipers. And so you said in the beginning, so do we create our own problems? Absolutely. That's the problem, is we create our own problems. That's the issue, is we are creating our own problems.
There's a follow-up answer and question to the same question is maybe a good question to ask ourselves is, would you want to be around you?
Well, yeah, that really is the issue. But the truth is, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
No matter what you are, of course you want to be around people like you, because you don't know who you are.
Yeah.
You're not. That's why you can't, because of, until you can come to that place where you can say, I'm broken. That's why I hang around with broken people. You won't ask the question, do I want to hang around with me? Because you're not able to see your own faults when you're in that mindset. So you have to get to the place to where you realize, yeah, you know what, I'm jacked up, and maybe, the reason I'm constantly getting burned or hurt or whatever is because I don't know how to, handle life. And so the only kinds of people that I can make relationships with are people like that. And so I gotta deal with my own inadequacies, before I can be at a place. Yeah, because I've been all over the world, and I've had some, relationships that have soured, some relationships but that's normal. That's normal. Not every relationship is going to be hitting it out of the park. It's not, some relationships are going to be not so good, and it's funny because I have relationships with people over the years that, good, trusting, deep relationships, and then they changed, as a person, they changed. They became, very suspicious, or of people in general, not talking about become suspicious of me in particular, but just to become suspicious and self-conscious, in a way of paranoia that has been counterproductive to relationships with other people, and those relationships have soured. But I don't lose sleep at night over that, because it's a part of life. It's just, relationships sour sometimes. You can't, there's nothing you can do about it, and you just have to accept the fact that sometimes relationships sour. But it's a part of life. And so when you achieve a level of normalcy when it comes to relationships, you don't see people as gossips or hurtful or untrusting or things like that. You see people as people, and somebody who's trusting today may not be trusting tomorrow.
Yeah.
But so are you just never going to trust people because of what they may become tomorrow? You just take the chance. Relationships are a risk. And so, my relationships with people are not exactly the same. I don't have this sort of, benchmark, that once you meet this benchmark, I open up everything about my life. No, every single relationship has a different level of caution and measure, I'm looking to, because I want to keep those relationships. I don't want to lose those relationships. So if you just give everybody the key to your front door, and then somebody rips you off, like exactly what happened. When I was in England, we used to have people over to the house all the time. And I had a guy come over to our house. I've shared this before, but I had a guy come over to our house. And he's like, dude, I had a key in my back door because the back door was double locked both sides. And it was really frustrating to me because it was like, why in the world did they make keyless doors? Well, once I realized how the high level of theft in Liverpool, I understood why they make double locked doors, is because they break the panes and then just unlock the door and come in. And and I had a guy explain that to me. You shouldn't leave the key because they'll knock that pane out and, take the key and unlock the door from the other side and then come in and steal your house. And they go in and take your bin bags and there's your trash bags and fill them up with your stuff and go away. And so I come into my house one day and sure enough, that key is gone. The pane has been broken out and my trash bags have been pulled out from underneath my sink and a lot of my stuff's gone. Well, gee, who do you think did it? The guy who just explained to me, that was going to happen.
It was really him?
Yeah. Oh, well, I don't know that for a fact,
okay.
but it obviously was because I didn't know enough people. I was new. I hadn't even been there that long. Nobody would even know.
I know where he leaves his key.
Yeah. And he knew how to get in. He knew what I had. And so he was able to come in, went right after the few things, because it wasn't, the things he stole were just for quick cash.
Yeah.
A fax machine and a camera and things like that. And so he just ran through the house quickly. He knew I would be at church.
Fax machine. How long ago was
Well, it was a while. And so, but things that you could, and then when the police came, I said, why didn't he steal my computer? My computer's probably worth everything that he stole combined. And he said, you can't sell that in a bar. A pub is what he said. He said, you can't sell that in a pub because that was the place. You go to a pub and, hey, I got a fax machine. You interested?
Yeah.
I've got a camera. I've got this, I got that. You just sell this stuff for peanuts.
Yeah.
But you can sell it to people because they'll sell it to somebody who really wants it and pay more money. So it's a whole business.
Yeah.
And so yeah, but it's like, oh, I'm never going to have people over at my house ever again. Never again. It's like, okay, lesson learned.
Mm-hmm.
Be careful. If you're going to have people over at your house, make sure your house is double locked. You just learn. You just learn that, you want people to be able to come in and say, hey, my house is secure, because you never know, especially as a Christian. I'm letting all kinds of people come over to my house. It wasn't like I just decided. I was vexed. I was upset. And I was careful, for a while, it's like, I'll be careful who I'm going to invite over. But it's like, I'm a pastor. I got to give people a benefit of the doubt. Not everybody's a thief. That guy happened to be a thief, but I'm here to help people. And so I'm going to have to take a little bit of risk here. And so minimize the risk, and still have relationships. And so, I have, my house is locked. I don't give everybody a key that just because they've been coming to church for a little while.
So okay, so you kind of answered this question without being asked it, but I was going to ask it next. So like thinking back at the scripture I mentioned, again, this is, Solomon is actually writing to his son, and he's saying, this is something you need to hold. Don't forget this. And he makes these few points. He actually goes on a little further in the scripture I read, but the first thing he says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding. And then when you look up what that word trust means, it actually means the word properly means to hie, which I'm so proud I learned a new word today, hie, H-I-E, for refuge, hie for refuge, which just means to hurry. It's just a different old word. Anyway, it was actually defined as archaic. That's an archaic word. But to hie for refuge, and to trust or be confident or be careless with, or to become careless. And so, okay, so now he's talking in terms of trusting God. Is that kind of trust the same we should be having for people?
No, of course not. The trust is variable in every circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
It's every situation. But and this is what I'm talking about. This is the root of the problem. This is, so when you don't know how to make relationships, everybody is a gossip. Everybody is going to burn you. Everybody, and the reason is because you have crossed the line, and you're being taken advantage of by lesser people because you don't have discretion. And that's a very important element. There's a difference between being paranoid and having discretion. Being able to be able to tell, whether, when I first meet somebody, I'm not here, hey, let me tell you the deep secrets of my soul. It's like, and that's probably not going to happen for a while, and then even then it's going to be guarded, but I will open myself to them in such a way to be inviting, to them, hey, this guy's really interested in having a deeper relationship with me. And there are people that I have a deeper relationship with, and there are people that I don't have a deeper relationship with. There are people that, it's almost a business relationship. I'm trying to help them, but I can tell that they've got some things they need to deal with in their own lives, and so they've got to deal with these things. And then if they deal with those things, then I can, and the funny thing is that, and those, they cycle. It's not always the same. And there are times where, I'm more careful than others, even with my own family, even with my own children. There are times where I can tell that they're crazy, and so it's like, I'm not going to get in the middle of this and try to, you don't, a sleeping lion, you probably could get away with walking in the cage and filling their water bowl. But if they're running around biting the bars and fighting and screaming and yelling, that's probably not the time to fill their water bowl.
Yeah.
And so it's discretion, but that's not always going to be the case. We were in China. I was in China, and they've got, they don't have OSHA in China. And so you could literally put your hand in the tiger cage. And I took a picture. I purposely took the picture at an angle so it looked like I was in the cage with the lion. The huge paws in this lion was just sound asleep. It looked like I was, because I put the camera right up inside the bars and took the picture so you couldn't see that that there were bars. And, but that's, I would never be inside of a lion's cage or a tiger's cage. Never. Until I got to know the tiger, got to know its habits, to see what happened to other people. Has anybody else been eaten by this
you're
guy?
You're going down this road. Let me ask the question, because you're already going down the road.
Yeah.
You can just keep expounding.
Okay.
But the question was going to be, how do you gain trust without getting to know people?
You got to get to know them. I mean, that's the bottom line, is you have to get to know
Clearly,
them.
there's no option here. You have to get to know people.
Yeah, you have to get to know them. I mean, that's all there's to it. And to find out, what are they, so you test the waters on things, you check, like, it's funny, like, so I have two cats. One cat is like, that cat, you could do anything to that cat. That cat, the worst thing that cat will ever do is cry. You'll hear, when somebody's has gone too far. But my other cat is like, you have 5 minutes. And after 5 minutes, I'm going to scratch your eyeballs out. And so
I love how a conversation about trust tends to cats. That's hilarious.
So that's, but I know this about these two cats.
Yeah.
And so I know that there's nothing I need to be careful of with my one cat, Alex. I don't have to be careful at all, because he doesn't have the temperament, to lash out. No matter what he won't. But I respect my other cat, Mitzi's space. Not that I'm afraid that she's going to attack me, as much as I know that she has limits, and I respect those limits. And we're fine. We're fine with each other. But she will allow me to do things that she won't allow other people to do, because I respect those limits. And you say, well, you shouldn't have to be that way with anything. That's coming from the mouth of somebody who doesn't understand relationships. If you're going to have a relationship with something else, I don't care what that something is, you have to respect the boundaries that are set by the other person or the other thing, whatever that may be. You have to respect those boundaries. If you don't respect your boundaries, then you're the one that's stupid, not them. That you're the one that's stupid. You want to have lots of relationships with lots of different kinds of people. You need to learn how to respect the boundaries that they set, because they set boundaries. And so if you don't want to be gossiped about, by a particular person who's a gossip, then don't give them anything to gossip about. And you don't have to worry about it, because they're not going to gossip, because they don't have any inside. There's a guy that I know of He's an interesting guy. It's another friend of mine who doesn't really like this guy. We both know this guy through different, I mean, similar acquaintance, but this guy, we can have long conversations, me and this guy, but I know the guy is he actually made the statement to another person. He said, "I have a secret. Do you want to know it?"
Wow.
And it's like, so you don't want that guy knowing secrets,
Yeah.
Because secrets are for sale, so that he can have a relationship with somebody else, but that's not somebody that you want to be telling secrets to, because they're for sale. And so it's fine, but we can have a relationship. We can have big, long conversations. You can ask me deep questions, so what did you do when you were in this situation? And I'll answer it, but I won't give him secrets. I won't let him he's not an insider. He'll never be an insider. Not everybody should be an insider, but I will give him information so that he can feel and experience relationship with me. Because I don't have a problem with that. There's just something broken, something that hopefully one day will be healed. He had actually made a statement to me that he was in England, and while he was in England, he was living with these guys in England, and he said they gave him he had a really, really difficult time at first. He said, I don't know. He said maybe they were just trying to domesticate me. They were trying to teach me how to be domesticated, and what he meant by that was, trying to teach me how to be able to have relationships with people, because they were just telling him straight up, you can't act like that, you can't be like that, you can't do these kinds of things that you do. And so I thought, oh, those are some great people to have in your life, because they're willing to put up with you and your flaws, but at the same time they're willing to tell you what your flaws are and how to overcome them. So that's some great people. I would welcome people like that in my life. People who could say, I know, and they're obviously coming from from a level of being able to do that. Not, these weren't just people who were just big mouths, just, know-it-alls. It wasn't that kind of a thing, because what they were trying to tell him was, to help him, when it was like, boy, if he puts this to practice, he might find himself a wife one day. He's a single guy running around the world. Good guy. He's a really good guy, but he's broken in certain ways. And it's like, these are things that need to be fixed.
Yeah.
But you don't just put your trust in people like that. They have to be fixed first.
Yeah.
And so, but that doesn't mean you can't have a relationship with them.
Yeah.
Which is my whole point in all this, is that if you don't know how to make relationships with people, then you're going to be one of those people that says, I don't trust anybody. Because you'll get burned a lot, because you'll be taken advantage of, because you will open yourself up to the wrong people. These are the kinds of people that also fall for scams as well. Mm-hmm. Is they're oh, I'm going to help you, I can help you do this. And it's like, oh, finally somebody who gets me. It's like, yeah, somebody who gets you, all right. They get you. They absolutely get you, and they're going to take advantage of you. They're going to burn you, and they're going to steal your money. But that's not everyone, and that is not normal, and that shouldn't be the normal experience if you know how to make relationships. But you're talking about, a broken person who's being taken advantage of by broken people.
Okay, so we have 8 minutes till 8 o'clock, and thinking about, again, looking back at our text, the scripture I read at the beginning, how does trusting God work? And real quickly, because the scripture covers these bases, and honestly, I don't know how to ask this question in such a way that compares it to trusting people, but because clearly there is a getting to know God involved in a relationship with God as well. Yeah. But right off the bat, the Bible teaches us that God is dependable in these areas. Yeah. And he specifically mentions these areas. I didn't read the whole chapter, but he mentions quite a few more. But he talks about knowledge and understanding. These are things you can trust God for and with. Your paths will be straight. So the path you're walking, direction in life, wisdom, health to your body,
Yeah.
financial stability
Yeah.
and dependence.
Which there's a lot in that.
Yeah.
I mean, there is literally a lot in that, that we're talking about the root of diseases.
Right. Yeah.
We're not just simply talking about, having a relationship with God is a healthy thing for you. It's like, no, not having a real good relationship with God can cause disease into your body, can cause perplexities in life, because of that. And so the difference with people is the first quite obvious part of it is that I think is the singular most important part of relationship with God. When you're talking about relationship with God, is the bottom line is you don't have a choice. If God is a terrible, horrible, awful individual who's lies and steals and his the can't be trusted and the scripture is a lie and all that kind of stuff, you're screwed then. That's all there is to it, because there's nobody above him. There's nobody to take him out, take him away, and because he's all powerful, as well, and all knowing. And so if he's all knowing, all powerful, and malevolent, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. And what do you think you're going to do to protect yourself from that? There's nothing you can. That's like trying to protect yourself from somebody, protecting yourself from your landlord, coming into your house and taking possession. Go ahead and go to the courts. Go ahead and go to, every legal possible thing that you can. If the person who owns your house wants you out, you're out.
Yeah.
You will be out. And there's nobody that's going to truly protect you. Usually what happens is because the landlord is a good person, he won't do that. But if you've got a bad landlord, you're going to just have to deal with whatever that landlord decides, or you're going to have to move out. You don't have any power over him. I don't care what the law says. There's not realistically. If you've got a bad landlord, you're not going to take advantage of him. And so that's that's God. So first things first, you have to not level the playing field, but understand the playing field. Is you're on a playing, you're entering into a game that you cannot win. So that's the first step. So when it comes to relationship with God and building, learning to trust God, it has to start there. It has to start with that understanding that if even if God is the worst, you're still in trouble, and so you're going to go to hell for all eternity anyway, because if he just doesn't like you, you're going to hell for all eternity, so there's nothing beneficial that you can have by keeping your distance from him. And so first things first is okay, well, let me see if I can make this work. That has to be the resolution, is how can I make this work, and so then from there, having that foundation, then it becomes putting things to the test. Okay, let me do this. Okay, God, I'm going to start trusting you in this area of my life. And then you find that God begins to show himself trustworthy, and then you can build on that, because the more trust that you put in his hands, the more trustworthy you see God is, and the more able you will be to put more things. Mm-hmm. And then it comes down to the fact of, I'm screwing up my life because I don't trust. Mm-hmm. I'm afraid to give God trust in these areas of my life. So I am experiencing the consequences of not trusting, and so that's how you build trust in God, is that the more things that you put in God's hands, the more you see that God is trustworthy, the more that things work out. And people who say, I put trust in God and he didn't come through, and he didn't do this and he didn't do that. I hear people say these kinds of things, and I think you've missed the point here by a million miles, is that you basically said, God, I want you to do something evil for me. And God hasn't done it. And so we say, so I'm not going to trust him because he won't rob a bank for me.
Yeah.
If he really cared about me, then he'd rob a bank. You know, he'd steal somebody's car and give it to me. You know, he'd steal somebody's house and give it to me. You know, there's somewhere along the way, God would do something unrighteous if he really, really cared about me in order for me to benefit. And it's like, it's not going to happen. And it's just not, God's not going to violate who he is in order to help you
Yeah.
or to do what you want him to do. So you have to start from the standpoint of you know, living, you know, sanely. You know, you have to, you know, God's not going to do unrighteous things so you can benefit.
So last question here, and then we'll close up. But clearly, there is, and we've mentioned this actually in the last couple of podcasts, and I didn't necessarily mean to bring it up this way, but it's become a theme. But this issue of our expectation really does play a huge part. And you think about like the statement. I actually noted this statement down because, like I said, it's kind of revealing. But constantly getting hurt by others they expect are trustworthy. And so there's this issue of, like, what is it you are expecting from people?
Yeah.
Or expecting from God.
So
how much does that play a part?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because wrong expectations are a problem. You know, and you know, so you expect why would you expect somebody to be trustworthy? Why would you expect that? You know, have you never let somebody down in your life ever? You know, and so if you have, then should somebody expect you to be trustworthy? You know, if you've ever one time let somebody down ever in your life, then there's a good possibility you'll do it again. So should anybody expect you to be trustworthy? You know, and so yeah, issues of expectation. That's what I was saying is, you know, should you expect to be able to put something, you know, should you expect to be able to rob a bank and then leave that money with God and you're not going to get in trouble? You know, God, I'm going to leave this to you. Teach me how to invest this money, how to show me how to launder this money so that I can keep it. You know, is that a valid expectation? Yeah. You know, but we do that, you know, when it comes to relationships, is we have this expectation that somebody who is not capable of a certain thing is going to be capable of this certain thing. You know, and why do you have that expectation? You know, why do you not understand that it's just a risk? You know, real relationships, genuine relationships, they're a risk. You know, that's why do half of marriages, or probably more now than half of marriages, end in divorce? Wrong expectations. I really believe that this person was going to meet all of my needs. Well, welcome to reality. Now you know that doesn't happen. And that's why somebody who's, you know, when you meet people that have been divorced, more than likely you've met somebody who's been divorced more than once. The few people that you have met that have only been divorced once are very cautious now, and they will not let that happen again. You know, and so they are guarded, you know, and they're never going to let that happen. They're never going to let somebody do that to them again, you know, and that, when I say that, I don't even mean that person that they divorced even did anything wrong. Just whatever the perception, I'm never letting that happen again. And so, you know, but people who have been married and been married for a long period of time, you won't meet somebody who will say, you know what, I just got lucky. I just met the right person, and we've never had a conflict. We've never had a problem. We've never had issues. There's never been anything, you know, that we've had to work through. It just worked. There's no such thing. There will be all kinds of problems, issues, conflicts, broken trust, all kinds of things that will be involved in that relationship. And that's why that relationship is so deep, is because it has survived the failings of human nature. And that's every relationship has to survive the failings of human nature before it becomes a deep abiding relationship. But when it comes to God, it's never like that. You know, God, it's us. We have to, God has to overcome our failings, which he has and does. And that's the great part of a relationship with God, is that God does overlook our, not so much overlook, because it's not so much overlooking as much as God understands. And he's there for us. He's there for us when we're in the hospital because we've done something stupid, but it's not that he didn't know we were going to do something stupid or that he didn't think we were going to do something stupid. He's okay. Yeah, I'm in the hospital here because you're stupid, but I knew that already, And so that's the great part of a relationship with God, is God already knows we're stupid.
Yeah.
But that's part of making relationships with people, is realizing, listen, I'm sorry, I can't believe I did this. I can't believe I acted like that. I can't believe I said this. And it's like, you know what? I knew, that this was a possibility. It's not like, we don't have to have foreknowledge. It's just, you're a human, and humans do stupid things, and yes, it's hard, and yes, it's going to, yes, it hurt. And yes, it's affected the relationship, and it's going to take a while to rebuild that. But hey, you know what? I get it. I get that this is what we are and where we are. And, I married you for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health. That's why we do wedding vows. It's like, you do know what you just said, right? You do realize you said in sickness and in health. You didn't say in health. And if sickness ever comes into this, we're done. Richer for poor, it's all these factors is like, no, I married you knowing that this could happen, but some people, they go, yeah, let's get, I sign it. Okay. But because that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
Those things are never going to happen to me. Well, you're stupid. You're naive. You think, oh, this is never going to happen to me. It's going to happen to you. And are you going to be able to survive it?
Yeah. Yeah. Typically the answer is no. They don't love me anymore.
Yeah, they don't love me. That's why we're not rich. We're not rich because they don't love me.
Yeah.
It's like...
Okay. You kind of answered this question, but if there's anything you want to add to it, this was just pitched in, is what can be said or advised to someone who may have felt betrayed by church? I think everything you just said applied because it's people.
If you haven't felt betrayed by church, then you probably haven't stayed at a church long enough. You probably either that or you aren't that involved. It's just something you do on Sunday. You're always going to, I can assure you, even if it's not real, you're going to feel that. If you're in a church worth its salt, you're going to feel attacked, assaulted, betrayed, rejected, marginalized, unimportant, bypass. You're going to feel all that. It's. I can assure you, you're going to go through every one of those things. This is the funny thing about church that I think is hilarious. Because it really is naive. A lot of what we've been talking about is the issue of being naive. And broken, was the word that I used. But ignorant of the truth of things is. I go through that as the pastor. It's like, well, why don't you control that? Well, welcome to reality. You don't control that. How can people have relationships in an environment where they aren't allowed to express the fullness of who they are? For better, for worse, richer, for poor, in sickness and in health. That's just the reality. And there are people who are TMI, but I know I do this a lot. There are people in church who I know they shouldn't be in church, but I don't throw them out. It's like, I'm going to throw you out. Why are you throwing me out? Because you're a jerk. You don't know it yet. But it's going to come out one day, and you're going to burn people, and you're going to hurt people. And I don't want you here, because I know what you'll be. I know what will happen, because I've met people like you before. It's like, no, my hope is they'll change. My hope is that God can do something in their lives. My hope is that they won't do that. They won't go through with they won't be who they are. That's always my hope, is that people are not going to be who they are. And like I said, I'm not going to give them the key to the church. I'm not going to give them the key to my life. I'm not going to give them, there are people they call and, that, I don't want to come to your church. I'm broke. I need money. I don't have a job. My wife left me and I have credit card debt and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, well, we have church on Sunday. I'll see you on Sunday. I need you to pay my rent for me this month. I promise I'll pay you back. Well, let's meet first, and it's like in my mind, I'm thinking, not on your life, because I know you won't pay me back.
Yeah.
And I know that if I give you the money, I won't see you again. My hope is that if I can get you to come to church 2 or 3 times, you'll see that scamming your way through life is not the solution. The truth of the matter is, out of 9 people that come in like that, 9 people go out like that. It's very rare, very, very, very rare that somebody actually makes the cut. When it comes to that, when you can scam people in church, you're kind of broken beyond repair. But there's always that possibility that God might be able to get a thought into your mind that will change you.
Yeah.
And you'll somehow, get sick of being a scam dog. But welcome to reality.
Yeah.
And as a result, I don't put my cell phone number on websites. We have a phone number for the church. That's a separate phone number where you leave messages, and that when you call and go, oh, I have credit card debt. My wife left me, and I had to borrow this phone to talk to somebody, but I have a bill coming up that's due tomorrow, and if I don't pay it by next week, I'm not going to be able to ever live again. Can you just give me $3? It's like oh yeah, I believe everything you're saying. It's like well, leave a note, leave a voicemail, and
Yeah.
and I'll call you back maybe.
Okay, we've got a viewer listener that is very late to the party, and I'm just gonna chatter off what's been typed here, but asking about because again the question asked in the beginning was what are reasons people are untrusting, and when applied to God or man, it was kind of the same. But for people, violations of sorts, misconceptions, we talked about a lot of that. The presence of what can be considered evil or wicked when it comes to not trusting in God.
So the question
was, what are some reasons people are untrusting?
Oh, I know yours. But what's
No, these are just answers to the question.
Oh, yeah. I see. So the answer.
So we already talked all about, violations of sorts, misconceptions, but the idea of, what can be considered evil or wicked being one of the reasons people don't trust in God.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So we kind of did go through a lot of that already, but so just to kind of wrap things up, I think, is the bottom line. I really, when it comes to the idea of trust and dealing with trust issues, the bottom line is I think 2 sides. Number one is you have to have an honest understanding of who you are, which that's a very difficult thing for people to have. My recommendations: read a lot of books, read as many books as you can get your hands on about these kinds of things. Get other people's input into your life about what it means to be a person, rather than just having your own definition of what it means to be a person, because your own definition of what it means to be a person usually has something to do with the effect of somebody who's a real person is somebody who does everything I want them to do, and that's not a person, that's a dog. That's what dogs do. You get a dog. If you want something that's going to do everything, that's going to be there at your beck and call, that you can kick when you're upset and will still come back and lick you, get a dog. But if you want to have relationships with humans, then you're going to need a little bit more of a definition than I want somebody who acts like a dog. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is going to be the idea, the understanding that you don't just hand people the keys to your soul right in the very beginning. You develop relationships with people. And when it comes to God, in relationship with God and trust issues with God, all of that plays into that. If you've been violated, you've been hurt, all these kinds of things, you have to understand it's because you did a lot of this. You did to yourself. We live in a time where everybody wants to blame everybody else. You have to understand. You have to. The buck stops here. In your own life, you want to be fixed. You want to stop being broken. You have to take responsibility that you have responded incorrectly to the things that have happened to you in life, regardless of how bad things are. Everybody's had bad things happen to them. Everybody's had broken relationships. Everybody's been burned. Everybody's been gossiped about. Everybody has had these kinds of experiences. But not everybody lives in this world where they don't trust anybody. In fact, it's not very often the case, because the people that are the most, the people that have the most amount of friends and deep relationships and things like that are people that have learned how to be able to develop relationships with people at different levels.
Yeah.
And then they're not guarded. They're not guarded in their, don't have to be guarded in their relationship. You just don't hand people the keys to your soul. They might be able to speak to you through the window. They might be able to come into your front room. They might be able to, sit on your couch. They might even be able to make their way into your bedroom, but it's not, not everybody. It's not, you don't just arbitrarily say you can come here and no further. You're building relationships with people, and people who have those, that have developed that, in relationship with you, and so I think that's a good way of finishing off.
Last question.
Oh, I thought we were done. Go
Somebody pitched one
Okay.
in here. This is the last question here. Okay, so how do you feel about the phrase "trust but verify after being burned," or the idea of having trust
but
broken?
verify after being burned?
No, so trust but verify, quote, end quote, after being burned, or the idea of having trust broken and forgiving them, but not allowing them to come back into your life. Or
Well,
return
again,
to
you're
the scale.
just talking about staying broken. That's you're just staying broken, and because you're just going to carry that on to other people. Burn me once, shame on me. Burn me twice, or burn me once, shame on you. Burn me twice, shame on me. Is that it's not a question of being guarded. It's a question of being smart.
Yeah.
Being wise. It's not guarded. You're not sitting in the dark, by the window with a shotgun. In every relationship. That everybody's the enemy and everybody's needs to be scrutinized. That's not. You're not going to build relationships like that. But like I said, open the window first, open the door, have them sit on your couch, invite them into your bedroom, but you don't just fling open the doors and just let people come in and out and well, it's whatever happens. But that, I don't want to rehash everything. Go back and
Yes. Yeah, we have talked about a lot of this already. Very cool. All right, that's it for tonight. And what are we going to do next week?
I've already decided, thought about this. Really, I really wanted to do a podcast next Tuesday on Christmas Eve, because I know not everybody is going to be spending Christmas Eve, in some kind of Christmas Eve ritual. And I thought, but we have church on Wednesday, and so we're going to be in church on Wednesday, and it would be nice to be able to have dinner with my kids and their families, my grandkids. Tuesday's the only way that we can do that. Monday's kind of early in the week. It's like a weird day to be having Christmas stuff. And so we're not going to have the podcast on Tuesday. It was, we talked about the idea of doing a pre-recorded one, but I don't think people are that excited about our podcast that they'll watch something that's pre-recorded, because the whole idea is to be interactive.
Yeah.
And to answer questions and things like that. And so that's more the idea of it. You're just going to have to do without my great pearls of wisdom for a week. I think you'll make it though. And so, yeah, but we will have, and I think that's important to communicate, is that we will have for sure a special New Year's Eve podcast, because New Year's Eve is Tuesday as well. But we're going to have an actual special New Year's Eve podcast where we will be having kind of an interactive in things going on in church, and then breaks in between that we will be having, doing like what we do in our podcast, being able to answer questions, ask questions, interactive. So I really want to do that. I'm looking forward to doing that, while people in church will be doing certain things like singing and doing drama, doing sketches. My son has told me nobody knows what a drama is, and so we'll be doing sketches. And so
Sketches.
yes, I know. I don't. My son says that makes more sense to people than dramas, because nobody wants to do dramas. Nobody likes drama. Everybody's involved in drama, but nobody likes drama. It's kind of a funny thing.
Sketches.
But so sketches, skits, Saturday Night Live type little, breaks in between sort of things. However you want to describe it. So we will be doing that. And that will be, but we're going to start an hour later. We're going to start at 8 p.m. instead of 7. So it'll be an hour later. And so for those of you who want to be a part of that, it's going to start at 8 o'clock Pacific time, not 7 o'clock like we normally do. And so for those of you who are wanting to watch that and be a part of it, but are too far away to actually physically come here and be a part of it, it's going to start at 8 o'clock. And I'm looking forward to doing it. It's going to definitely, you're not going to just be a third person, it's not going to be like some kind of third person, watching something happen. There'll be opportunity to be a part and to speak. I wanted to try to make it, live, where people could come and be live, but it's just too complicated to do that. It's just, there's too many factors, and, to try to do it in such a way that so crazy people don't get a chance to express themselves. You have to have delays and stuff like that. So that makes things just more complicated, and you have to have more people involved in doing that. So, maybe sometime in the future. I wanted to do that when we first started the podcast, and here we are, 2 years we've been doing podcasts, and we haven't even come 1 inch closer to doing that. And so I think by the time we actually do it, I'll be too old to actually be able to even be involved. And so when I say too old, I mean I won't be on Earth anymore.
So it's not going to happen.
So it probably won't happen. But anyway, so for the most part, I'm looking forward to doing the New Year's Eve one, and my whole family will be here, and so we'll be able to do some different things, ask questions, comments, things like that to people who aren't able to be here, and you can ask them. So is your dad really, does he really live the way that he says he does? You can grill them and try to get information out of them that
I have a section called what is it now? We're calling it sketches. I don't know what the whole thing's going to be broken down to. I'm going to use the wrong lingo here. Elliot will have to correct me at some point. Anyway, forget it.
So that's it. That's
We won't
So
be here
that's
next
what's
week.
going to be. No, not next week,
We'll
but
be doing
an
more
hour
to come.
later, New Year's Eve special. We will be putting that on YouTube and stuff. But I encourage you, those of you who are watching on the live stream and watching the what we're doing in YouTube and stuff like that. I mean, not the live stream, but watching the podcast. Tell people about it. Really, it's something, especially in the Bay Area. Tell people about this, because we really do try to give wisdom and understanding from a godly perspective, but put it in such a way that help people to understand that this works in daily life. This isn't just some weird religious thing that only works, because we live in some sort of, some little, fake world, some fantasy world that, doesn't interact with the real world. No, this is real world.
Yeah.
And it is the real world. So go on.
Cool. Sweet. Well, before next week, we do have our midweek and Sunday morning, Sunday evening services. We do have this. We are a church. This is in person, so we invite you to join us. And that we will be here tomorrow night. The information will be on your screen. We have a monthly concert. The next one will be in January. I think on the 7th is the date. But
First Saturday.
is the first Saturday of the month. So. Check us out. We hope to see you. We hope to meet you. If you've never been to a service before, we look forward to it. And we'll see you guys next Tuesday.